Hey, listen, before I even get into the breakdown of this BET situation, I need you to sit with something for a second. Kendrick Lamar just won Best Male Hip-Hop Artist at the 2026 BET Awards for the 9th time in his career. 9th. Without dropping an album in 2025. Without showing up to the ceremony. Without saying a single word on social media about any of it. And the entire internet, specifically one very specific corner of the internet that I think we all know exactly which corner I am talking about, has lost its entire mind. But here is what nobody is telling you. And here is why I had to make this video tonight instead of the one I had planned. Because what is actually happening here is not what the timeline is telling you is happening. The narrative being pushed right now, that the BET Awards are rigged, that Kendrick is being propped up, that this is some kind of industry-wide pandering campaign, that narrative was manufactured, deliberately, by a very specific group of people who needed the conversation to land exactly where it has landed. And when I show you the receipts on what Kendrick actually did in 2025, not the album he did not drop, but the 7 separate culture-defining moments he absolutely did deliver, you are going to understand why every single person crying about this award right now is either lying to you on purpose or has not been paying attention on purpose. I am going to walk you through the Super Bowl number, the tour number, the streaming number, the feature run. And then, when we get to the part where I break down exactly what the BET voting body is actually weighing when they decide this category, and I promise you we are getting there, because that is the part nobody on Twitter wants to talk about, you are going to see why this was not even a close decision. It was not even a debate in the room. Drake fans are furious, but they are furious at the wrong thing. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. So let me set the table here. Because if you have only been getting this story through angry quote tweets and TikToks with Drake songs playing in the background, you are missing about 90% of the actual situation. Here is what happened. At the 2026 BET Awards, which aired this past Sunday with Drake himself reportedly hosting portions of the ceremony, the category for Best Male Hip-Hop Artist was announced with the following nominees: A$AP Rocky, Baby Keem, Big X The Plug, DaBaby, Don Toliver, Drake, J. Cole, and Tip. That is T.I. for anybody who is new to the conversation. And when the envelope opened, the name on the card was Kendrick Lamar. Now Kendrick has now won this specific category in 2013, 2015, 2017, 2018, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, and now 2026. That is 9 wins in this category alone. He is the most decorated artist in BET Awards history at this point. It is not even close. And the moment the announcement went out, within minutes, the timeline detonated. Drake supporters, J. Cole supporters, Don Toliver supporters, and a very loud group of people who, I'm going to be honest, do not actually listen to any of these artists but love showing up for the discourse, all started posting variations of the same complaint. Kendrick did not drop an album in 2025. How can he win Best Male Hip-Hop Artist when he did not put out a project? The award is rigged. The BET Awards are useless. The voting body is biased. And on and on and on. Now here is where the stakes start to multiply, because this is not just about a trophy. This is about who gets to define what hip-hop excellence actually means in this current era. Because if the standard for Best Male Hip-Hop Artist is simply dropping an album in the calendar year, then we are saying that the bar is just showing up to the studio. That is it. That is the entire criteria. Just put something out and you qualify. And I am sorry, but that is not what this category has ever meant. That is not what it means at the Grammys. That is not what it means at the AMAs. That is not what it means anywhere in this industry. Best Male Hip-Hop Artist means the artist who most defined, advanced, and impacted hip-hop in the eligibility window. And when you actually sit down and look at what Kendrick Lamar did in the eligibility window, which by the way is roughly the calendar year of 2025 stretching into early 2026, the case for anybody else winning this award starts to fall apart so fast that you have to start asking yourself why anyone is even trying to make that case in the first place. The cultural stakes here are bigger than people realize. Because if this narrative succeeds, if the manufactured outrage actually convinces casual fans that Kendrick did not deserve this, then we are letting a very specific group of people rewrite the history of one of the most dominant individual years any rapper has ever had. And I am not going to let that happen on my channel. So let me start showing you what actually happened in 2025, because the receipts on this are absolutely insane. Let me start with the most obvious one, because if you do not start here, you are not having a serious conversation. In February of 2025, Kendrick Lamar headlined the Super Bowl 59 halftime show. That performance became, according to Nielsen and multiple media outlets that covered the broadcast, the most watched halftime show in Super Bowl history. Over 130 million viewers. Numbers that beat Michael Jackson's halftime show, beat Prince's halftime show, beat Beyoncé's halftime show, beat Rihanna's halftime show. The most watched halftime show ever. And he used that stage, the single biggest stage in American entertainment, the platform that more eyeballs land on than any other moment in our culture, to perform Not Like Us in front of the entire country. Not a sanitized version, not a watered-down version. The actual song, with the actual implications, with Serena Williams crip-walking on stage, with Samuel L. Jackson playing Uncle Sam, with every visual reference loaded with meaning that hip-hop heads were decoding for weeks afterwards. That is moment number one, and that moment alone, in any normal year, would put a rapper in serious contention for Best Male Hip-Hop Artist. Now, let me give you moment number two, the Grand National Tour. Kendrick Lamar and SZA went on a co-headlining stadium tour throughout 2025 that, by the time it wrapped up in December, had been reported as one of the highest-grossing hip-hop tours of all time. We are talking stadiums across North America and Europe. We are talking ticket prices that were selling out on resale platforms within minutes. We are talking a tour that, depending on whose numbers you trust, pulled in well over $200 million in gross revenue. That is not a small accomplishment. That is a cultural event happening on repeat for months. And Kendrick was the headlining hip-hop name on that bill, the rapper whose presence was the engine of that entire run. Moment number three. Not Like Us continued its absolutely historic chart run into 2025. The song that won 5 Grammys at the 2025 Grammy ceremony, including Record of the Year and Song of the Year, which, by the way, is the first time a diss track has ever won either of those categories, kept charting, kept streaming, kept being played in clubs, and at sporting events, and at weddings, and at every single hip-hop function in America for the entirety of 2025. 5 Grammys, including the 2 most prestigious General Field Awards in the entire ceremony. For a diss track, let that sink in. Moment number 4. The feature run. Because while the loudest voices on the timeline keep saying Kendrick did not drop anything, what they actually mean is he did not drop a solo album. What he absolutely did was appear on some of the most talked about songs of the year. He appeared on Clips's Chains and Whips, a song that was so culturally significant that it became a whole conversation in itself about the state of lyrical hip-hop. He appeared on Baby Key material that kept the PG Lang ecosystem moving. He delivered guest verses that, every single time they dropped, became their own news cycles for 2 or 3 days. That is what dominance looks like when you do not even need to release a project of your own. And listen, before anyone in the comments tries to come in here and tell me that features do not count for this category, I want you to go look at the historical voting patterns for Best Male Hip-Hop Artist and tell me with a straight face that features have never factored in. Of course they have. They always have. The award has always been about overall impact. And speaking of overall impact, I have not even gotten to the streaming numbers yet, and trust me, when you see what 2025 actually looked like for Kendrick on the platforms, you are going to understand why this conversation should have ended before it even started. And, oh, do I have so much more for you on this? Because I have been holding back on the deeper stuff, and I think the Drake stans are really not going to like what is coming next. Because what I have shown you so far is just the surface level. That is the stuff anybody with a calendar and a Wikipedia page can verify. What I am about to walk you through is the part of the story that the angry quote tweets are very deliberately not engaging with, because if they engaged with it, the entire argument they are making collapses in real time. So stay with me through this next section, because the cultural reaction inside the industry, from artists, from executives, from people who actually were in the building or close to people in the building, tells a story that is very, very different from the one Twitter is selling you tonight. Let me get into the cultural layer now, because this is where things get really interesting and where the timeline narrative really starts to fall apart. The first thing I want to point out is the silence from inside the industry. And I do not mean that as a throwaway line. I mean it as actual evidence. Because when there is genuine controversy about an awards decision in hip-hop, when the industry itself believes the wrong person won, you hear about it. Artists tweet. Producers subtweet. Executives leak quotes to journalists. The whole machinery of the business starts whispering. And in this case, after Kendrick's name was announced, you got functionally none of that from anybody who actually matters in the room. No major artist of stature came out and said the wrong person won. No A-list producer questioned the decision. No label executive went on the record or even off the record, as far as I have been able to track, suggesting this was a bad call. The only noise has come from the fan layer, specifically a very motivated subset of the fan layer, and from a handful of media accounts that, let's be honest, generate engagement by manufacturing controversy regardless of what the industry actually thinks. That silence is evidence. That silence is the people who actually understand how this business works telling you, with their lack of words, that this was not a controversial decision at all inside the rooms where the voting actually happens. The second piece of cultural evidence I want to put in front of you is the reaction from artists who were actually in the nominee pool. Have you seen J. Cole say anything? No. Have you seen A$AP Rocky make a peep? No. Have you seen Don Toliver, who by the way had a genuinely great year and a project that a lot of people loved, complain about losing? No. The only people who are upset are people who were not nominated for the award and have no actual standing in the conversation. The artists who were in that category, the ones who could legitimately argue they were robbed if they felt that way, are saying absolutely nothing. Because they know. They know what Kendrick did in 2025. They know what the room saw. They know what the metrics looked like. And they're not going to embarrass themselves by pretending otherwise. The third piece of cultural evidence is what is happening with the Drake camp specifically. And I want to be really careful here, because I am not trying to dunk for the sake of dunking. I am trying to tell you what I am observing. Drake reportedly hosted segments of the BET Awards this year. That is a significant moment for him. That is the network handing him a platform and saying, we want you here, we want you involved, we want you connected to this brand. And then, in the very same ceremony where he was given that platform, he watched Kendrick Lamar's name get called for the 9th time in a category he was directly nominated in. And what has Drake said? Nothing. No tweet. No Instagram story. No subliminal lyric drop. Nothing. Because Drake, whatever you think of him, is a smart enough operator to understand that engaging with this would make it worse. The fourth piece of cultural evidence, and this is the one I think really crystallizes everything, is the fan behavior itself. Because watch what they are arguing. They are not arguing that Kendrick's year was less impactful than Drake's year, because they cannot. They are arguing that the criteria should be different. They are saying it should only count if you dropped an album. They are saying features do not count. They are saying tours do not count. They are saying the Super Bowl does not count. They are trying to change the rules of the award after the result came in, which is the exact thing fans do when they know they cannot win the argument on the actual merits. And here is where I have to acknowledge something, because I want to be fair and I want to be balanced, even though I think the answer is clear. There is an argument, a real argument, that an artist who drops a major studio album in the eligibility window should have an edge in this category over an artist who did not. I hear that argument. I respect that argument. In a normal year against a normal field, that argument might actually win. But this was not a normal year. And Kendrick's 2025 was not a normal artist's year. And when you put the Super Bowl, the historic tour, the Grammy sweep, the ongoing chart dominance, and the feature run on one side of the scale, and you put any of the other nominees' 2025 outputs on the other side of the scale does not tip. It snaps in half. That is the cultural reality of where we are right now. And now I need to take this somewhere else, because we have been talking about culture and we have been talking about evidence. But there is a deeper story underneath all of this, a story about how the hip-hop awards economy actually works. And once I show you that, you're going to understand why this conversation was never really about Kendrick at all. Now I want to shift gears completely, because everything I've shown you so far is the surface and the culture. But the real story, the one that explains why this manufactured outrage exists in the first place, lives at the business level. And this is where I am going to lose some of you and gain some of you, because I am going to talk about things that fan accounts and reaction channels do not usually talk about. The first systemic angle I want you to understand is how BET award voting actually functions as a process. This is not a popular vote. This is not a streaming numbers algorithm. The Best Male Hip-Hop Artist category is determined by a voting academy that includes industry professionals, journalists, music executives, and other credentialed voices inside the business. These are people whose job is to assess the full body of an artist's impact across a calendar window. They are not looking at one metric. They are looking at the totality. They are weighing cultural footprint, commercial performance, critical reception, live performance, and yes, contribution through features and collaborations. So when you have fans on Twitter saying the award should only go to whoever dropped an album, what they are really saying is they wish the voting structure were something it is not and has never been. They are advocating for a fantasy version of this award that does not exist in the real world. That is the first systemic angle. The second systemic angle is the streaming economy and how it has fundamentally distorted what fans believe about what counts as success in hip-hop. We are living in an era where artists are pressured by labels to drop constantly. Drop singles every 6 weeks. Drop projects every 9 months. Keep the algorithm fed. Keep the playlists active. And what that has created is a fan base that has been conditioned to equate output volume with relevance. If your favorite artist is not dropping every quarter, the algorithm forgets them, and by extension, a certain kind of fan starts to forget them too. Kendrick has been operating on a completely different timeline. He drops when he has something to say. He moves with intention. He treats his catalog like it has value rather than like it is a content stream. And what has happened is the streaming era fan has been so conditioned to equate dropping with relevance that when an artist who does not play that game continues to dominate everything else, they cannot process it. They have no framework for it. So they default to saying the award is rigged because the alternative, that there are tiers of success in hip-hop that have nothing to do with how often you drop, is too uncomfortable for them to sit with. The third systemic angle is the most uncomfortable one, and I'm going to say it carefully. There is a manufactured narrative ecosystem in hip-hop right now that activates every single time Kendrick Lamar wins something. And I am not talking about organic fan reaction. I am talking about a very specific network of accounts, blogs, podcast pages, and reaction channels that have built their entire engagement model around stoking opposition to Kendrick and stoking sympathy for the artist who lost the battle. Every time Kendrick wins an award, gets a placement, or pulls a number, the same accounts post the same kinds of takes within the same window of time. The same framing, the same vocabulary, the same complaints. Reportedly, there are people in this ecosystem who are directly incentivized to keep this conversation alive because the conflict itself is their business model. Their channels grow when there is friction. Their podcasts get clicks when there is outrage. So they manufacture the outrage. They do not report the moment. They create the moment. And what looks from the outside like organic backlash is, when you actually trace the patterns, a coordinated content cycle that needs Kendrick winning to keep functioning. Think about it for a second. If Kendrick had lost this award, what would those same accounts have posted? They would have celebrated. They would have moved on. There would be no story for them. Kendrick winning is what feeds them. Kendrick winning is the engine that powers their entire ecosystem. So when you see waves of identical-sounding outrage hit the timeline within hours of a Kendrick win, you are not seeing organic culture. You are seeing a content economy that has been built specifically to extract engagement from the existence of a Kendrick Lamar success cycle. The fourth thing I want to mention briefly is how this connects to the broader battle over who gets to define hip-hop's narrative going forward. We are in a moment right now where hip-hop is being pulled in two directions. On one side, you have the artists who treat the genre as a craft, who release with intention, who have something to say. On the other side, you have a content-driven version of hip-hop where the goal is volume, virality, and constant algorithmic feeding. The BET voting body, by giving this award to Kendrick again, is taking a side in that battle. They are saying the craft model still wins. They are saying intention still matters. They are saying a body of work judged in its totality is still the standard. And that is a statement that the content economy side of the conversation does not want made. Because if that standard holds, a lot of their favorites do not measure up. That is the real fight. That is what this is actually about. The award is a proxy for a much larger conversation about what hip-hop is allowed to be in this era. And the people screaming the loudest right now are screaming because the answer is not going their way. So now let me give you the truth bomb that I have been building toward this entire video. The reason the manufactured outrage around this award is happening with this much intensity is not because anyone actually believes Kendrick did not deserve it. The reason it is happening is because the people pushing the narrative are watching their entire framework for measuring success in hip-hop get dismantled in real time. For years, the dominant argument from a certain side of the conversation has been that commercial output, streaming volume, and chart consistency are the only metrics that matter. That is the argument that has been made over and over again across every platform, every podcast, every comment section for years. And under that framework, certain artists look like the kings of the genre, and certain other artists look like they have fallen off. The problem is that framework has been quietly destroyed in 2025. Because what Kendrick demonstrated this year is that you cannot drop an album, not show up to the awards, not engage with the social media news cycle, not promote yourself constantly, and still own the entire culture from the top down. Super Bowl. historic tour, Grammy sweep, chart longevity, feature dominance, cultural footprint that you could measure with a satellite. Without dropping a single solo project. That is the truth bomb. That is what is actually being revealed by this BET win. Not that the awards are rigged. Not that Kendrick is being propped up. The opposite. The award is correctly identifying that the framework that fans have been using to argue about hip-hop for the last several years has been wrong the entire time. And once that framework cracks, the artists who have been propped up by it start to look very different. The artists who were dominating under the old streaming volume framework do not automatically dominate under the new totality of impact framework. And that is terrifying for the fan ecosystem that was emotionally invested in the old framework, because it means their guy is not actually winning the way they thought he was winning. So they have to attack the award. They have to attack the voting body. They have to attack the criteria. Because if they do not attack those things, they have to face the fact that the artist they have been defending may not actually be in the position they thought he was in. And that is the part nobody is willing to say out loud on the timeline right now. The BET voting body did not pander to Kendrick. They did not manufacture his win. They looked at 2025 and they did the math. And the math was not close. The math has not been close for a long time. The only reason it ever looked close is because the framework being used to measure it was deliberately constructed to make it look close. And in 2025, Kendrick made it impossible to keep using that framework. He overwhelmed it. He broke it. He performed at a level so dominant across so many separate verticals that no measurement system designed to favor anyone else could survive contact with the evidence. That is what this award is recognizing. And that is why the people screaming the loudest right now are screaming. Not because they think Kendrick did not deserve it, because they know he did, and they cannot say it out loud without admitting that everything they have been arguing for years has been wrong. And here is where I want to land the plane, because I think it is important that we end this in the right place. The thing about Kendrick Lamar is that he has been operating with a level of discipline that the rest of this industry has not been able to match for almost his entire career. He releases when he has something to say. He performs when the performance has weight. He shows up when the showing up matters, and he stays home when the staying home is the move. He does not chase metrics. He does not chase relevance. He does not get pulled into petty cycles that drain his creative energy. And what has happened, very quietly and very steadily, is that the industry has reorganized itself around the gravity of how he operates. Awards bodies, streaming platforms, festival bookers, brand partners, the Super Bowl itself. All of these institutions have started moving in his direction, not because he chased them, but because he made himself the artist they had to come to. That is the long game. That is what it looks like when somebody with integrity and discipline plays it the right way for a decade and a half. While other artists have been releasing constantly to stay in the algorithm, Kendrick has been building something that does not need the algorithm. While other artists have been responding to every news cycle, Kendrick has been ignoring news cycles and making the next news cycle himself. While other artists have been fighting for attention, Kendrick has been earning consideration. And the gap between those two strategies has, over time, become the difference between being a star and being a generational artist. The 9th BET win is not the achievement. The 9th BET win is the consequence. The achievement is the body of work and the way of operating that made the 9th win inevitable. One artist makes music that demands you stop everything and listen. The other makes music that demands you stream it 3 more times to hit a quota. And the room knows the difference. The voters know the difference. The industry knows the difference. And whether or not the loudest voices on Twitter want to admit it, the culture knows the difference too. So when you see all the noise tonight about how the award is meaningless, how the voters are biased, how Kendrick did not deserve it, what you are actually seeing is the sound of a framework collapsing. And the artist who built his career outside of that framework is the artist still standing on top of the genre while the framework falls apart around him. That is not pandering. That is not manufactured. That is what dominance actually looks like when the noise gets stripped away and only the work is left. But I want to be clear with you before I close this out, because this is only the start of where this story is going. The Iceman situation is still developing, and what I am hearing about how that rollout is being structured is going to be a conversation we have to have on this channel very, very soon, because there are things being baked into that release strategy that I do not think most people are paying attention to yet. The 2026 Grammy nominations are coming, and the voting body for the Grammys is a completely different ecosystem than BET's voting body. And the way that is going to shake out is going to either confirm everything I just told you or open up a whole new chapter in this story. And the question of whether Kendrick drops in 2026, because if he does, the conversation we had tonight is going to look like a warm-up compared to what happens when an actual Kendrick album lands on top of everything else he has already accomplished. So if you are not subscribed, hit that subscribe button right now, because the way these next few months are going to play out, you do not want to miss a single video. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me if you think the Drake fans have a point, or if you think this whole manufactured outrage cycle is exactly what I have been describing. Hit like if this broke down the situation in a way that the rest of your timeline has not. And before you click away, I want to put one more thing in front of you, because the next video I am working on is going to break down something even crazier. There's a name that has been quietly attached to both the Iceman rollout and to the publishing situation around one of the biggest catalogs in hip-hop right now. And when you see who that name is and what it means for the next 12 months of this culture, you're going to understand why the BET conversation tonight was actually the smallest part of a much, much bigger story. That video is dropping next, and I promise you, you have not heard anybody connect these dots yet. I will see you in the next one. Peace.